today. For this week's seminar, we'll be doing a graduate student lightning round. We've done these a couple times before. This year I tried to center it all around outreach or different activities where we've been interacting with a different community outside of our department. So we'll be hearing from a number of students, and we'll start it off with Brian and Hill. There's a lot of people that are about to talk, so Brian, start.
Okay, yeah, we do have several people because now this has been, well, I guess the fourth year since I got involved in the third year of directly doing atmospheric science related stuff. But so we're just going to be talking, and there have been different sets of instructors every year, and you're going to hear a little bit from each of them. But I think this has been a really cool outreach thing for our department that has consistently gotten better every year that we've done it. And so we'll kind of just walk you through. So the program is out of the School of Education here at the university. It's called WICED, or that's how the acronym is WICED, and it's colloquially and lovingly referred to as such. Stands for the Wisconsin Center for Academically Talented Youth. They offer a bunch of different summer programs. I kind of have them listed out there, and it's all for different age ranges. Some of them are just day camps throughout the summer, but a few of them, I believe, YSSP and the ALP are both residential programs where the students come and live in a dorm and stay on campus and have counselors. It's like a real summer camp. The program that we teach for, or that I've been teaching for, is the ALP. It's the Advanced Learning Program. It's a 3-week intensive summer camp. Basically, I mean, and the kids themselves, I call it teachings from stories from teaching at a high school nerd camp. But that word is very fondly embraced by the community. They all consider themselves nerds. They get together to nerd out about stuff. They spell it out on their t-shirts. Like, it's really, it's actually a very cool environment for kids who typically, if you maybe relate to any of them in high school, in a public high school, if you're ahead of the curve, you can sometimes be left out of the group. And this is a place where people who are all like that can come together and really kind of interact with each other. And it's really cool to see the friendships that they develop over time. It's a pretty intensive program, so every day for 3 weeks there's 6 hours of instruction, and then they have 5 hours of instruction. There's an hour for lunch in there, and then they have a 2-hour study hall in the evening. So it's a pretty intensive program, and the idea is to do an entire intro-level, college-level course, semester-long course in 3 weeks for these kids. So there's just a brief example of the courses offered, but what I'd like to point out is that we have an atmospheric science course in weather and satellite meteorology that is now being taught. The rest of this is just going to be the three sets of instructors kind of talking about their experience and showing some pictures. But just a brief story, the first year I taught for this program was 4 years ago, and I was just kind of looking for a little bit of extra summer money, and at the bottom of those Grad Connection weekly emails or whatever that you get, I saw this job opportunity, and they needed an instructor for a Science of Sustainability class. And I was like, all right, you know, whatever, it looked good. Applied maybe 3 weeks. It was a last-minute bailout for the instructor, and they had no curriculum or anything. So that first year, I put together a curriculum and taught this class, and all 9 of my students were from a Korean math and science academy that comes to this program. They have a partnership with KAIST as a high school academy in Korea. And so after that first year was when I switched into atmospheric sciences and done the first year's worth of courses. When they asked me to teach again, I was like, sure, I'd like to, but you know, maybe I thought I could kind of enhance my own understanding of this material by teaching it to high school students, and proposed having basically this weather and satellite meteorology class. They said, you know what, write up a syllabus and we'll see, and put it to the board, and they approved it. So now that class has been offered for the last 3 years, I taught it the first year. The second year, I left town and was going to Seattle, and Melissa took over. Melissa Breeden and Zoe was her TA, basically, for the class. And then this last year, Luke and Andrew Zambo co-taught. Sorry, Andrew. They ended up co-teaching because, and I think, you'll hear from them, but I think it worked out pretty well. The first year we did this, the first few days we partnered with the Sims high school group that comes for like a week-long class. So I was working with Margaret Mooney, and she took us on some of their field trips that they had. So this was to the observatory, learn about planet motion. We went to the the local WKOW TV station, and we got to play with the green rooms and do stuff like that. That's me not knowing what I'm doing in front of the green station. And then a nice picture that we took up on the roof, and that was my cohort of students for the first time I taught that atmospheric science class. What I think, I didn't have that many pictures, and I think what you'll see that I think is really interesting from the next set and hearing from the other instructors is that our class is very unique because of the department support that we've gotten here, specifically from Sue and from Pete. They've lent us a classroom, usually an 823, and then Pete gives all the kids accounts on the 1411 computer labs. And then as you'll see, they get to, we've had guest speakers come in, they've gone to the Antarctic Research Lab, they've gone to Anchor to Size Lab, we've had professors and graduate students come in and speak, and basically they really get to see this wide range of what our discipline actually looks like. Whereas a lot of the other courses are just in some random classroom somewhere and don't have access to all the cool resources here that we have. And so I think the kids have really enjoyed it. I've always really enjoyed teaching it. And I was sad to pass it off, but I was really glad that there were capable and competent students willing to pick it up and carry it. So I'll just have Zoe kind of come up and talk a little bit about her year and show you her pictures, and Andrew and Luke will do the same thing.
Yeah, so we picked it up, the atmospheric science portion of it. The second year, I was the EA, though I did help teach a few of the lectures just because I felt like it. And Melissa was happy to pass it off. Similarly, we went and played with the green screen, which was fun, and went to the observatory, see Melissa and some of our students enjoying looking at outer space, or through a telescope, and how that worked. Going and visiting Author's Lab and learning how different radar, temperature reading things worked, and other equipment in this lab. Similar to Brian's first year, where he had 9 students from KAIST, we had 4 students all from KAIST, and so we tried to personalize some of the lessons to them, where pollution is a big problem in South Korea, and it's kind of a controversial topic. Is it South Korea? Is it China's pollution? Who's responsible for it? So we tried to focus in a little bit more on that and had a day where it was just kind of personalized to them. They could actually feel the tangible experience, and it's kind of fun to get their idea about who's responsible for it. I forget his name, I think it's David, but he was one of Tracy Holloway's students, came in and gave us a talk about air pollution, which was a lot of fun. And yeah, so it's a lot of fun from, I think, both of an instructional and more assistant perspective. It's fun to watch them all learn.
I've got my t-shirt on for the occasion. I'm not really sure the order of these slides because I need to put them together. But as Brian said, I think they have quite a unique experience in the AOS program of the ALP over the summer, simply because it was very evident at the end when we had to put together a list of people to thank across the university and on campus. We had probably double all of the other courses that were offered for the ALP summer courses, so it was good to see that we were sort of providing them a very well-rounded kind of experience in the department. we had a lot of different speakers. We had Dr. Lior from downstairs, we had Marion, we had, who else did we have?
We had Dave, can't pronounce his last name, from the Antarctic Research Center. Nikolajczyk. Yeah. We also did the planetarium, the news station again, and Greg came in and lectured on tropical meteorology as well.
Yeah, it's quite incredible what these kids can actually absorb in the little time that we have available. I think that by the end of it, we'd covered most of what you'd cover in a 100 class, in a 330 class, and maybe even some of what you cover in a 453 class as well, given the backgrounds that we had, and maybe even the 425 class as well.
425 for sure too.
They'd had a lot of things thrown at them, but by the end of it, the projects that they produced in their final week, which is kind of wrapping everything together, and we gave them sort of a very sort of open-ended project. At the end, we said, you guys can take whatever you want from what you've studied, whether it be middle altitude cyclones, whether it be tropical cyclones, severe weather, which we covered all of which in 3 weeks. It produced some really great projects, and it was really great to see that even 14-year-olds could produce some of the better work that I've seen as a TA over the last few years. So it was pretty incredible. But this is us outside of the observatory, I think. Oh no, this is the roof. This is sorry. But yeah, so we had a couple students from South Korea too, but we also had 3 students from more locally in Wisconsin as well. So it was kind of an interesting challenge to try to kind of convey certain points to people that were less well equipped with English than maybe the other students that were in the class. So it was kind of a challenging and yet fun experience to try to teach a wide variety of ages and students with different backgrounds. So this is us going through the equations of motion with a couple of 14-year-olds, a 15-year-old, and a couple of 16-year-olds. So it's definitely an interesting experience trying to teach some of this stuff to them. But as I said, they did grasp a lot of it. This is us joining a balloon launch with Eric up on the AOS roof. It was great that they got to have that experience and see data collected. We were showing them a lot of soundings, and to be able to actually take them up there and show them firsthand was really fun. So that was a good experience that they were able to get. And then this is in the Antarctic Research Center downstairs. They got to see that too, which was a lot of fun. And then, as I mentioned, we had a lot of guest speakers like Dr. Lior, and one of the students in particular, one of my fondest memories, he got very much into streamwise vorticity by the end of the class, and ended up presenting an entire talk on it, and used the board and was getting very animated, using his hands to show us the spin of the vorticity, and it left me very proud, because I was hoping that he would kind of maybe change his idea of what major he wanted to do, which it sounded like
he was.
Maybe he was changing his idea about doing chemical engineering at university and potentially going to do meteorology, because there's excitement in tornadoes. So it was good to be able to kind of provide him and them with the kind of great minds that we have in the science here. I think that's it, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I don't really have much more to add other than, we co-instructed. I think this is like the first time we did that, and honestly, I thought that worked out extremely well, especially given the amount of stuff that we had to, teach the students and whatnot. I mean, he focused more on the dynamic stuff. I focused more on like radiation, cloud physics, the basics of that, and just kind of piggybacking off of each other for, teaching that type of stuff. I thought worked out extremely well too. And I guess the final thing I'll say is, we're scheduled to teach it again next year. They've already solicited the class, and hopefully maybe have another co-instructor and or EA next year.
Yeah, that was just going to be what I was going to add. The Wickedy folks really like having this class because of kind of all this unique stuff, and it's a way different experience than TAing for an AOS 100 class.
Oh yeah.
More rewarding, I would say, even though I've never TA'd an AOS 100
Challenging
class.
and rewarding. I would give you both of those things.
Definitely both of those things. So I usually send an email out, and it might be from Andrew, but if you see something referencing Wickedy coming around next summer for help teaching the class, this is what it's about. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Any questions for any of the kind folks that spoke? Yeah.
So this is great. I've actually been talking with Margaret. We're working with the committee to try and build out the same kind of program, but it would be targeted for underrepresented groups. And I would, I don't know whether that's going to be done this cycle, but we're looking, or whether it will be as one of these Wickedy or one of the group camps. But again, the fact that AOS is already doing it and that you've got enthusiastic instructors, I might present some different challenges, but that's something that we're trying to do. Cool.
All right. Then we'll transition to Alyson and talking about getting in at NCAR.
So I did the ASP, which is the Advanced Study Program summer school over at NCAR over the summer. And it was in the beginning of June at Boulder, which is where NCAR and UCAR are stationed out of. Does anyone not know what NCAR is before I just assume? Okay. So it's a 2-week summer school in Boulder, and it's at the NCAR headquarters. It's at the Mesa Lab, which is the highest building, I think, in Boulder because it was constructed before they put limits on it. So if you've ever been to Boulder, you have the mountains, you have the foothills, and it's the highest one up there. So if you ever just see this like big, it looks like a villain's lab from James Bond. It's like very 60s aesthetic. It's like these interesting like circular buildings, and that's where we were at. It's actually supposed to be some.
It was inspired by Mesa Verde, wasn't it? By the.
No,
I
but
thought
it was made by
inspired that.
some famous
I am
architect.
paid.
Yeah.
In the early 60s.
It was like one of his first projects, so it's really interesting just to go and see. It's open to the public if you're ever there and you want to see some cool stuff. So we were split into groups. It was 25 of us, and we were split based on our interests. So it was the CSET, which is the Cloud System Evolution in the Trades, the PLOWs, the Profiling of Winter Storms, and then the PCAN, Plains Elevated Convection at Night. Those are 3 of the field campaigns that NCAR has recently put on, and we are split based on whether we wanted to look at the field observations against an LES or their global climate model CAM. And we were supposed to do a project about the synthesis of observations and the model that we chose. So field campaign observations are extremely messy. If you've ever had the pleasure of looking at them, they might be really hard to understand depending on what instrument you have, just because if you go and try to look at the data without really reading any documentation, you're going to have a rough time. But luckily we had an expert assigned to us, so it was someone from the NCAR lab who would guide us through how to use the observations. So like when you're looking at the LiDAR and it said that you have a towering cumulonimbus because it's reaching your plane at 20,000 feet. You shouldn't trust that because it's actually probably just receiving some bad backscatter, and you should throw out that observation. And we don't have to look that up in documentation because we had an expert sitting there being like, no, ignore that. So some of the speakers that we had at the summer school stayed on for a few extra days to act as like additional experts for us. So that included people like Chris Brotherton. His dad was at the SSCC here in the 90s, but he's a huge researcher out of UW, and he headed up the CSAT campaign and a lot of other campaigns. He's like the person for shallow cloud LES modeling. We had Hugh Morrison. He does the Morrison and Gettleman microphysics. If you guys have ever heard of it, it's in the GCM. So he's a huge cloud microphysics, ice microphysics, global climate model guide. He was really knowledgeable. Bob Robber, who came and spoke about a month ago, I think he headed up the PLOWs campaign, and he's part of PCAN, so he was great to talk to and just like understand how to get ahead kind of in the field. Sue Vandenhever, who's also a huge ice cloud microphysics out of CSU. Greg I'm not going to use that, McFarquhar. Yeah, I think now he's at Oklahoma, but he's really great at like convection. Yeah?
Cloud probes.
Yeah, like he does anything on an airplane dealing with convection or mesoscale, he's probably an expert at it. And then Vince Larson was there for a day. He does the club parameterization, which is in the Cam 6, and he's from UW-Milwaukee. So like we had a very, very good group of experts come and talk to us and sit there with us as we were working on our projects over the 2 weeks. We also got to meet a lot of the engineers who make the instruments that go aboard the airplanes or make up the sites whenever NCAR does a field campaign. So we got to visit both the foothills and then their RAF labs. This is a picture of their G5, which is their one of their aircrafts that they use for their field campaigns. And we got to talk to a lot of the engineers who design and build the instruments that go on this. So like their cloud radar engineer we got to talk to, the head of the remote Institute and Remote Sensing Observations at the EOL we got to talk to. Just like the head of basically every department at the Earth Observing Lab came and gave us a talk and like guided us through their instruments that they use. We also got to use a lot of model output that isn't yet released to the public and field campaign observations, which hadn't yet been released to the public. So some of the LES that we had hadn't been published at the time. I think now Brotherton has gotten out the paper maybe just recently. But we had the CSAT data for the cloud radar and the LiDAR, which isn't yet released to the public because they're still working out a few data set inconsistencies, I guess you could say. And then we had the opportunity too to have the CAM and LES rerun with specific things that we wanted. So like, as we were doing our projects, if we were like, oh, I want in-cloud vertical motion from this LES, they reran it and got us the in-cloud vertical motion. I mean, they only reran it once because it's very intensive to run and expensive, but yeah, it was really cool to actually talk to the people who make the models and run the models to get exactly what we wanted from our projects. So this is just an example of the CSAT. I guess this is like the model versus the observations. And that's something interesting that we got to do, which is take the LES and act as if we had put a plane through it, so that like a fake G5, and then compare it to the actual field campaign observations. So it's a more apples to apples comparison, which is all about the synthesis of observations and models. And then we also got to use the HSRL against a CAM simulated HSRL. So CAM has this simulation that they can run where they act as if it's specific instruments that are going and flying the same path through the boxes. So it's a really interesting thing if you get the chance to ever get your hands on some of that data to compare against actual field observations. So I think the coolest thing was just seeing everything at NCAR. Like, this is Bjorn Jorgensen. He's head of the Cloud and Aerosol group over at EOL, and he's talking to us about the different sensors that they put on to look at the liquid water in clouds and pressure. And then we also got to look at this, which is, I think that's the LiDAR that they put on the wing of, or no, that they put inside of the actual G5 and then point down. We got to go on a hike behind the Mesa Lab, which it connects up to some of the like coolest trails in Boulder, like the Mesa Trail, which goes all along the city's edge. And then there was also a field trip outing to go look at one of the sites. I think it's the, I can't remember what the name is, but one of the sites that they have up in the actual mountains, like an hour outside of Boulder. We got to do a lot of schmoozing at lunch and dinner because every lunch we got to eat with the person who was presenting that day or the multiple people who were presenting. So that was always a chance to network, to talk about our individual research projects unrelated to NCAR, or just ask for general advice like, how do I get a postdoc at X? And at the end, we had this big dinner where a bunch of area scientists came and talked to us, and we had a speed networking event. So Boulder is convenient because it's next to NCAR, UCAR, and then it also has CU Boulder right next to it, and CSU, so a lot of scientists came into town to the dinner because they were invited, and they got free dinner, and they got to talk to us. We also had one weekend in Boulder to ourselves to just do whatever we want, so you can go hiking and recreate the Titanic, or go rock climbing, which is what I did, and then I tore open the back of my leg about 9 inches. But it's really cool. It's really fun. You should don't tear yourself open, but like you should go and enjoy Boulder for a weekend if you ever get the chance. So at the end of the 2 weeks, we actually had to show that we did work and give a presentation on how we use the synthesis of observations and modeling for our chosen field campaign. So I did CSET, and we looked at the stratocumulus to cumulus transition and the role of precipitation. Other people did things like comparing particle size distributions between work and aircraft observation during clouds. So really, like, you could choose your specific interest, so mine was precipitation, and then apply it to the presentation in your chosen project. And then I've had a few classmates from this, like I think 3 of the 25, ended up going on Relámpago, which is going on right now in Argentina, because of the connections that they made during this summer school. Because NCAR was putting it on and they hadn't filled all the spots. So during summer school, they kept being like, hey, if you guys want to go on Relámpago, now that you guys have so much like experience working with field observations, like you should apply and try to get on it. So really, I think the NCAR ASP did give me an in into NCAR, because now I know a lot of NCAR staff who could host a stay if that's what I chose to do. You meet so many faculty from other universities that you could ask to be reviewers of your future papers, so you get outside the network that we only have here in Wisconsin. And then I met 24 other atmospheric research scientists who are one day going to graduate and hopefully be fellow researchers. So if you want to go, it's been held every year since 1966 when NCAR was built. The applications open in the spring, and the topic changes every year. So this year, it was the synthesis of observations and models, but next year it could be something totally different, like looking into the CAM model, or they've done things like clouds and aerosols, or they've done things on severe weather. So every year they choose like a very specific interest, and it might fit yours. There's 25 spots. It requires 2 letters of recommendation, one which has to be from a not advisor. There's usually 150 applicants, so it is a little bit selective in who they choose. But if you want to apply, which I really stress that you should if you want to go to a summer school, you can at asp.ucars.edu/ASPcolloquia. And that's it. Any questions?
Next up, we've got Julia. Talk about some fun in the Arctic.
Put me off there. Sorry.
No.
All right. Hi everyone. My name is Maria Shates. If you haven't met me, I'm a 2nd-year grad student in this department, and today I'm going to be talking to you all about the Arctic Field Summer School experience that I had. So I went to Akademically, Alaska, which is formerly known as Barrow, for a summer program on Arctic coastal environments and rapid transition. So it's a 2-week program with grad students and faculty instructors, and we also had the presence of the press, so a local public news journalist came with us and did a story on us as well with a minute-long clip. So I include this map on here to just show how far away it is, just even for me to think about. I was really, really far away. And then that's just a screenshot of the article that the journalist did on us. So this program, which is focusing on field methods and remote sensing of the Arctic, so sea ice and lake ice and permafrost on these coastal regions, really emphasized the need to look at some broader impacts and how local cultures are affected by science and this type of research. So in Utqiagvik in particular, the people that live there, the local people that live there are primarily Inupiat, and in order to actually interact with the people there, there's a corporation called the Utqiagvik Inupiat Corporation, where it hosted us in dormitories and provided equipment, and they organized a soup and science event for us to interact with the community and have conversations over reindeer soup. And people living there really care about Arctic sea ice and the changes, and also with coastal permafrost erosion, they really care. That community depends on sea ice for subsistence hunting. And also, with coastal permafrost erosion, as the permafrost is thawing, their homes are actually falling into the sea. That's legitimately happening. So most of the summer program was spent on the sea ice, and these are some pictures I took out while we rode out on snowmobiles to the fast ice. We were walking out to the edge of the sea ice. So on the left picture, it's a photo I took, and you might notice that there's tracks, and that's polar bears. So in this area, there's a legitimate predator to humans. We have polar bears out there. And wherever we went out in the field, we had a bear guard with us. And they would make sure it's safe before we do any work or before we, stop going anywhere or stop to look around. And so, yeah, I just wanted to include that. And there was even a few days near the dormitories where the walk from the dormitories to the building of the corporation, just like 5-minute walk, we weren't allowed to walk because there were polar bear sightings and the visibility was so low. So it was a serious thing. And on the right here, there's some melt ponds out, melt ponds out on the sea ice as well. And this is at the edge of the sea ice where we finally walked over to, and that's the bear guard with the rifle, watching out over the area to make sure we're all safe. So that's kind of neat. Now, what are we actually doing out on the sea ice? Because it's really nice to see where we were and where I went, which is awesome, incredible. Well, we're looking at some of the properties of sea ice, and we're trying to get some measurements using new field methods and techniques. So, in the right two pictures, it's actually me taking measurements, which is really exciting. The middle one, I'm using an ice core drill with an auger to get an ice core out from lagoon ice. You might notice that in these two images, the ice is really smooth and homogeneous, and that's because over the Alyson Lagoon, which is where we were, ice hadn't started to break up quite yet, and it's a lot smoother. So yeah, in the middle image, I'm getting an ice core, and in the right image, I am getting sea ice thickness measurements. And in this left image, it's actually an ice core that we got out of a local lake, and we're getting a temperature profile of this core. So another component of this program was connecting these field observations to remote sensing. And because we're looking at sea ice and land surfaces, we were introduced to synthetic aperture radar, or the SAR. And this right image right here is SAR imagery for just a couple days before we were out there of the lagoon. So this is land, and this is the ice of the lagoon. And the blue rectangle, I guess you can't see what's in there, but there's actually a bright line, sort of bright line, and that's where there's a crack in the ice, and the SAR is able to pick that up from the only one. So yeah, there's a faint line in there, and we actually rode out and saw the wet crack in the ice. So that's neat. And then on the left image, we were introduced to interferometry, and that's also the lagoon. You can see there's a landmass over this image. And on the far left corner of the figure, that's where there's a lot of motion, and so you'll have ice breakup or just water, and so the figure is indicating that there's not just a solid stationary surface. Whereas when you look closer to the lagoon, which is in this area, the colors are smoother because the ice hasn't started to break up yet. So these are two components of remote sensing that were introduced to me during this program, which was new. Then, in addition to looking at sea ice, we were looking at the snowpack above it, which was new for me. I'm from Southern California, so snow in itself is relatively new. I'm like, ooh, snow. And then also here in this department, my research is on snowfall. So I haven't started to think quite yet until this program about what happens as it starts to accumulate. So it was an opportunity to get some measurements and learn about these different properties. of snow, so the hardness and the density and the temperature profile of the snowpack. And we actually had to dig these snow pits to get in there and make these measurements. And in the right image, that's the reporter who's following us around and observing us, interviewing us, listening to an explanation from one of the faculty instructors as he described how to explore the hardness of the snowpack. All right, so with all of these summer programs, or with many of them at least, I can't say for all, the main part of the program is to give us tools and techniques to use and then actually do a project. So I got in a group with 3 other people where we ambitiously sought to try and combine modeling and observations and remote sensing to study sea ice characteristics in the Alyson Lagoon. My role in this group project was looking at a simplified sea ice model where we simulated the growth of sea ice thickness throughout the growing season of the ice growing season. And then we evaluated the scale of the model by comparing to some of our measurements over Alyson Lagoon, so snow depth and sea ice thickness. And one of the group members attempted to use the sea ice model that I worked on to kind of date when these sediments were entrained. So she was looking at sediments in the sea ice core. And so when were these sediments entrained in the ice? The model is, super simple, so it didn't quite capture that kind of detail. So I've told you a lot about this program and what I did there and what I enjoyed about it, but who made this program and how did I find out about it? And I want to tell you a little bit about that. So the full name of the program is not just Arctic Field Summer School. It's Interpark Arctic Field Summer Schools, Norway, Canada, USA collaboration. And it's a project primarily funded by the Norwegian Research Council. And this funding this funding is supporting a collaborative effort between 3 institutions, University in Tromsø, and the University of Alaska Fairbanks, the International Arctic Research Center there, so IARC, and the University of Calgary, Canada. So there's a 3-year program that they've developed, and last year it was in Svalbard, where they were out on an icebreaker and looking at sea ice. And then this year it was in Utqiagvik, where I was, and then in the following year, Canada, or University of Calgary, Canada will be hosting, and they'll be looking at a subarctic mountain glacier. And with this three-year collaborative project, they're hoping that students will gain actual hands-on experience using these field techniques that they teach us, and then a better understanding of challenges in monitoring and learning about the cryosphere. And then ultimately promote long-term connections, as with many other programs where they're actually getting us to collaborate and get to know each other. So how did I find out about this particular program is sort of a longer story. I did a summer program a couple years ago at IARC also on modeling the Arctic climate system. And then I continued to stay in touch with them and follow them on social media, which, whether or not you may be excited about the fact that social media is a good resource for programs to share information and advertise their programs, it's a way to find stuff out. So I found out about Interpark Arctic Field School through a social media post. So I encourage maybe following important institutes on those websites. And then on this slide, I'm including, just in case you wanted to check it out or something, the link for the call for applications for the program that I just attended. There isn't one out for next year, as far as I can tell, but if you're interested, then maybe that's something you can follow and keep an eye open for. Thank you for listening. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Julia, how long is the sea ice thickness time series in this location, or a close location?
In this location, how long is my time series?
Well, how long is the time series established at these places?
Oh.
Not many years, probably, right?
So in like the Alyson Lagoon, all the sea ice in that lagoon will melt and then refreeze. So.
But I mean, what about let's say you do they have a long time series of what the ice looks like on March 1st?
Oh, you know what? I'm not 100% sure. I believe that sort of information exists.
Okay.
I would be surprised if it didn't, that they didn't have this sort of information of whether thickness is or what the extent is on a particular day. since it's important for subsistence hunting.
Yeah, I
think
figured that
local
would be-
people do care and keep track of that.
Yeah, right. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Yes.
Is this field school always at Barrow, or the place that I can't pronounce?
Oh, Academic.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there will be a recurring field school out in Barrow. I know that the UW-AOS and UW Corporation hosts scientists and many scientific groups. So I could imagine that there could be more in UW, but this particular program, since it has a 3-year start and end time, I don't believe that, or I can't say for certain whether or not that they'll return there.
Which year was this for this program?
This program was just this last summer.
So the first one out of the 3 years.
That was the second one out of 3 years. The first one was up near Svalbard, which I missed that one. Would have been pretty cool. Yes.
How many ice cores did you do?
So I think we had fewer than 20 total ice cores. It was an effort. There were 9 students. So it was out of 9 students and some of the instructors showing us how to get these ice cores. It wasn't, we were not able to get that many, but we were able to get more sea ice thickness measurements just because that required, drilling in a hole and sticking in some equipment and then taking a measurement.
You might go down and talk to Jeff Key. I don't know if you know him.
Not yet.
So he's the cryosphere lead
Okay.
at NOAA for all the satellite observations of the cryosphere.
Oh, so you're probably interested in knowing some of that for validation.
Yeah, and he could also get you, a lot of the satellite data. But yeah, they did a small campaign out on Green Bay where they did the same thing, just so they could validate some of their retrievals. And if you've got some other ones, you should let them know.
Share that. Yeah, we did actually share our data with I think it's SumUp or something like that, where it's like an NSF site where the data repository. So we shared some of our information, but I could definitely share some more.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
What other, variables were you looking at?
So for the model, or for just a general observation?
Yeah.
So we were looking at snow depth, the sea ice thickness, freeboard for the sea ice, water depth, and then temperature. So more simple things like that. Temperature. It was generally a focus on sea ice, and also with there was 2 lakes too that we had access to, but we weren't looking at any of the atmospheric variables, which I was hoping to explore.
Yeah, one of the big uncertainties was we talked about for identifying surface fluxes has been snow on ice, and how much snow is on top of the ice,
Right.
which is hard to sense remotely as well.
Right. Yeah, we were taking, so for some of the field days, we were taking temperature profiles of the snowpack, which could help with understanding the insulating properties of the snow, and with also the depth, but it was a focus on the ice, less than the snow. Yeah. But we have depth measurements, which could help. Okay, thank you for listening.
Round it all off with Maria talking about the GSA outreach. Oh yeah. Where is it? All right, so my name is Maria. I am a grad student here studying under John Martin, if you don't know me already. And I'm just going to end this lightning round talking about outreach through GSA. So I'm sure a lot of you know, but maybe some of you don't. We have an outreach committee through GSA, and I've been the kind of chair of it for the last couple years or so. So I just want to talk a little bit about the goals of our outreach committee, why it's important, and then hopefully I encourage some of you to participate. So I know we send out a sheet for you to sign up at the beginning of the semester, but outreach is something you can always join in on. So, all right, so these are outreach goals for our GSA, and generally I think for scientific outreach.
So some of these general goals are to encourage young students to pursue science. So a lot of our outreach programs our outreach goes to these schools and kind of spends an hour or so talking with students about, we have the rotating tank, or we do some science experiments, and hopefully to pique their interest in science or other STEM fields. And going along with this, another goal is to engage underrepresented groups. So I know a lot of programs sometimes draw in students that are in special programs, and then they can get information about this atmospheric science program. But when we go out for outreach, a lot of times, or I've been trying to go to these public schools so that all the students are getting some information about the program or science in general and how to pursue it, and just keep them interested. So I think that outreach is a great way to do this, because a lot of students, maybe they go home and they don't get these opportunities outside of their classrooms or that kind of thing. So, and in the long run, engaging and informing underrepresented groups helps science in so many ways by making it more, giving a more diverse background in the long run, and it leads to better credibility, I'd say. Another goal is to introduce the general public to real scientists, considering us all real scientists here. I think that it's a good way to interest and inform your public. So a lot of the public is getting their information from non-scientific sources like Facebook or news outlets. And I think outreach is a great way for actual scientists to inform the public without any interference from media or other inaccurate sources. I'm not saying media is always inaccurate, but we can ensure that they're getting accurate information if it's coming directly from us. And I think it also works to improve the public trust in scientists. So I think a lot of times they'll go to news outlets or something like that because maybe they think that we view ourselves up here and they're just down there. And this is a way to bridge that gap, to show them we're real humans too. Here's our face, here's a little bit about us, and then we can talk to the general public. And then lastly, improve or practice scientific communication to a non-scientific audience. So for this, I'm going to go on, a few years ago, or just 2 years ago, we had Dr. Marshall Shepard come, and he is a fantastic scientific speaker. And I remember really reflecting on what he was saying about how important it is to be a good scientific communicator. And this is taken from his talk, and also he's got something called 9 Tips for Communicating Science. That's why I put quotes around these. But one of the tips is to know your audience. And in outreach, that's really important because we're not constantly going to the same type of audience. Sometimes our events are to the public, sometimes they're for elementary school, sometimes they're for high school. And so you kind of have to change your message every time, or change how you're presenting this information. Another tip is don't use jargon. And this is very important, and I think this is one of the hardest things for many people when they're communicating science to a non-scientific audience. You're in this science for so long, you forget what the general public knows and what they don't know. And there's a list of terms that mean something to us, and to them it means something completely different, and we forget what the other meaning is. So this is a great way to simplifying your message, or using other common terms that they would understand. Getting to the point, for these outreach things, unlike teaching, I don't have a whole semester to teach them concepts I need to find a few important points I want them to bring home. And so you have an hour or so to get this across. So this is a good way to practice getting to the point. And then using analogies and metaphors, when you're in a limited time frame, this is a great way to get messages across, is using analogies and metaphors. And one that he mentions is when trying to describe the difference between weather and climate, instead of spending a long time talking about that, you could use the analogy or the metaphor, weather is your mood, climate is your personality. So that's an example that Dr. Marshall Shepard uses. And then relate. So I think this is a great way to practice relating. Sometimes we find it easier to try to make ourselves more personable when we're talking to kids and stuff. And so you might get practice through that, and then also trying to relate when you're talking to the public too. So, and then kind of along the same lines, we just had Dr. John Foley come, and his messages were similar. And he's also talking about communicating to the middle, and I think that's exactly what outreach does. In outreach, we're not talking to the science deniers or alarmists necessarily. We're engaging students of all ages with curiosities and unformed opinions, and we're also, or maybe only partially formed opinions. And then we're also engaging with just the general Madison community through other events. And embracing your humanity, this is just like the relate point for Dr. Shepard. So it requires a personal approach to build your trust with the students and public. And then another is to share a positive vision. So, you know, these outreach events are usually showing something positive, you know, how beneficial science is, or how exciting it is, to try to get them excited about it. So this is a great way to do so. So I just wanted to talk about a few of the recent outreach events we've done, and the ones I really like. So just this past weekend we did Expanding Your Horizons. I think this is my third year doing it, but we do this is done every year. And it's young women exploring STEM careers. So this is put on by UW-Madison, Edgewood, and Madison College. And they bring in 6th through 8th grade girls to visit the labs and classrooms of Madison and Edgewood and Madison, and UW-Madison. And they're able to spend an hour with us, and it's a career focused kind of. So you spend the first part of it, or we did, talking about who we were, how we got interested in science, and what are all the different possibilities that you could do in this particular like atmospheric science. And then we showed them some of, you know, we did an experiment to kind of show them a little bit about atmospheric science, or inform them on that. So we have a rotating tank, and then this is us doing cloud in a jar, which is always a favorite for them. They actually do a form of this for AOS 100, but they're able to grasp onto the key concepts of this, and it's fun to change how you present it to them versus the AOS 100. And then we also have one in the spring that we do every year too. It's UW Science Expeditions, and this is a campus-wide open house, and it's free and open to the public. So I like this one because it's not just students, the whole public can come in and they explore the UW facilities and get to know the scientists. So I also like this because the whole AOSS building comes together, and we can learn, you know, you just see everyone working together, and maybe the public will come in to look at the Space Science and Engineering Center and then stumble upon the AOS booth or the AMRC. So it's a really great way for the public to get informed about this. And so we do the rotating tank usually for this. We don't have to do it every year, but they also do roof tours, and then they have the real Earth going, and the AMRC is gear for the kids to try on, or anyone to try on. You don't have to be a kid. But that one's really fun too, because I actually found it's not just kids. Sometimes you see, or you do see people of all ages trickling in and seeing that. And then another one I think is really important is outreach to high schools. So Madison area schools actually have meteorology or science courses when I looked it up, which is awesome. I know I didn't when I was in high school. So my first experience with it was either on my own out of interest, or like the first real class I had was here at UW. And I think it's important to provide resources to students interested in physical sciences. And one thing I think is amazing is that people don't know that UW-Madison has an atmospheric science program. And I didn't know even my first semester here at UW-Madison that it had an atmospheric science program. So I think that it's a great way to inform students that this is a thing you can go into and keep keep them intrigued in the sciences, and also encourage communication between the K-12 science teachers and scientists. You know, when I went to East High School, this is where this is at, the teacher, she had so many questions about just the content of the stuff that she wants to get feedback, you know, because they teach just science in general and have all these different topics, so they don't necessarily know the specifics or of some of this science. So it's fun to inform them and keep that communication going. And this is something, they're not really reaching out to me yet. I'm trying to reach out more to high schools and say, hey, like, I can do this, and yeah. And then I'll end with, we do now have an outreach email at the bottom of our homepage, which is great. Thank you, Pete, for doing that. So if you hear anyone looking for outreach, you can just, send them that, and that actually just gets forwarded to whoever the outreach coordinator is. But I'm hoping to expand this outreach, and it's easier to do so with more volunteers. I think it's really good for anyone. No one loses out by participating in outreach. And that's all I've got. So any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
And this goes probably to the first group that presented too. With all the different things that we do here, is there anything that really resonates with kids that you see time after time gets their attention?
I know they always love doing like hands-on. I think what I like the best is when the different departments are able to work together, so you can see not just the AOS side, but like there's ice drilling and I don't know. So the open house is really fun for that reason, but I'm not sure if anyone else is.
It's a hands-on, and I think students get the most engaged when they actually get to see and like touch and like play with data.
Yeah.
It sparks a curiosity, or taps into their natural curiosity and allows them to just kind of run with it.
Yeah.
Just a comment, I think it's outstanding that you are doing the program here for bringing in 6th to 8th grade girls.
Yeah.
My observation of taking my son to coding camp and walking in and seeing 14 boys and 0 girls. So for a coding camp or a 3D printing camp where there's 15 boys and 2 girls.
Yeah.
It's clear that having stuff like that is just cool.
Yeah, that's one of the first things I've ever seen that's just catered towards women in STEM field. I haven't seen any other programs like that, but that's my favorite outreach that we do. So.
Have you interacted all with Wisely? Women in Science and Engineering Leadership Institute?
No, but I
I'm
should.
not sure that they do stuff. I'm not sure there's much outreach related to the more university.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also Tracy Holloway with the Earth Science Women's Network.
Okay.
We should drop her
Good
in
resource. Yeah.
But in terms of outreach, I don't know what else is. That's great to see.
How long has the outreach address been on the page, Maria? I know we talked about it, but I don't remember asking.
2 hours.
No.
Oh, okay.
I just came in my office and asked
wanted to
for
know
the
if there was
email
any
address
traffic
about
yet.
noon,
Yeah,
so,
okay. I think it's great. I think it's a really great addition, and that's a special contact. Because when you go to the bottom of pages and you see contact us, especially if you're directed to outreach, it's exactly what most people are looking for in a certain category. It's a great idea.
The idea is in the future we'll have a little page about what kind of outreach we
Yeah,
do.
what have we done? What do we usually do? Right. That's a
Yep.
great idea.
And I know Julia's working to help us get more instruments and funding for outreach too. So, because I think right now we have none. So.
Actually, can I ask another question?
Yeah.
Is there any thinking yet about writing to various charitable organizations with a proposal that says this is the kind of thing that we do? We are especially targeting certain communities. We're asking you, as this particular charitable organization, to help us buy instruments to do this. because we can't seem to get the funding otherwise, and this would be a great way to promote underrepresented kids, whether it's underrepresented by sex or other criteria. And I think there's charitable organizations that go for that.
Okay. Yeah, and it looks like you're having to jump through a lot of hoops just to get funding now, so that would be a good.
I think it would be a great thing to pursue. The first step might be to just list all of the ones that are in town or in the region, and just write them a short letter of solicitation. What do you think about this? This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
It's exactly like what you're saying you'd put on the website.
Cool, thank you.
If there's no more questions, let's give all the people another round of applause. Have a nice day.
Thank you for coming in exactly on time.
So